Hey everybody, this is Matthew Soltesiak, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast, part of the Minute Media Podcast Network. The Detroit Lions are now in a new, grittier era, and we look beyond just the kneecaps when it comes to the analysis. I speak with a variety of guests and interview key players, gaining more insight on what makes this team go. Welcome to another episode. In this episode, we talk Detroit Lions after some recent media sessions by the players. We got updates on Aidan Hutchinson and some insights from Sam LaPorta. Those will guide this show. We'll also talk about some rule proposals that didn't pass and what we think of those. Plus, we'll get the perspective of another sports podcast here in Michigan. What are their takes on the Lions' moves and expectations for the upcoming 2025 season? That and more. Let's get to it, Lions fans.
This is Trevor Nowaski, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast.
Folks, as we look to get started, I want to bring up the More Than Four Foundation again, something Coach Angers talked about in our last episode. They help raising money for pediatric cancer research. And to get more information, please visit morethan4foundation.org. I'll also have a link to that in our show notes. There's an event going on right now, so please check that out. Now, joining me today are Brett Saturis and Brett Bond from the Mitten State Sports Corners podcast. They are a podcast on all things Detroit sports related. Did I get that right, guys? You cover all the four major franchises?
That is correct. And we dabble into football mainly as well.
Okay.
And as we just hit any topics that relate to sports in Michigan.
That's right.
If it's like if they're pretty big, so we'll just dabble into those too.
Awesome. Well, welcome to the show. Happy to have you guys here.
Thanks for having us.
All right, well, let's start with some of the information that came out of the owners' meeting last week. There were a couple of big rule proposals. The first one was by the Lions about changing the seeding in the playoffs. And we ultimately found out it wasn't really by the Lions, it was by the NFL, and they kind of got the Lions to propose it. And the original idea was to reseed, top to bottom based on record. And then it kind of got tweaked where, well, the first round would stay the same. So the division winners would all host a game at home. And then in the second round, it would reseed completely chronologically based on who's left. Ultimately, it got pulled. They never voted on it. I'm wondering your guys' take. Do you think there should be an adjustment to the reseeding of the playoffs, or should they kind of leave it the way it is?
I mean, it's a pretty fine line there because you look at it from last year's perspective of where games 17 between the Lions and Vikings, both are 14-2. One's going to be 14-3, one's going to be 15-2 at the end of the day. One gets the one seed, one drops all the way down. What was it, 4 or 5?
5.
Wild card.
Yeah. That's a big drop. And did Vikings have to travel, or they hosted a game?
They traveled to the Rams.
Yeah, I mean, you go 14-3, and then you don't even get home playoff game. That's tough. That's really tough. So that was a fine line, but I mean, you do gotta win your division. And you do gotta celebrate that in a way. So obviously, ensuring they get the home playoff game, I think, is very important. But I kind of like the proposal of where it is kind of like seeded, but all division winners do get the home game. But then you also factor in the team that went to 14-3 but didn't win their division. But they are still good enough to host a playoff because, in all actuality, they were the 2 seed last year. If you really go 1 through 7 or 8.
My thought is that, same kind of thing. I mean, Minnesota being such a good team last year, kind of got the short end of the stick. And I got to tell you, had the Lions went out and lost that game, which, as we remember, they went out and asserted their dominance in that game, quite frankly. But had they been on the opposite end of that spectrum, I can't say I'd feel very good about that, and I understand the rules are what they are, and you have to be understanding of a drop to some degree. I guess it falls in a similar conversation as college football seeding, and that you have really good teams that get a low seed or don't make the playoffs at all. And so I do understand that happens, but I don't know. I can definitely understand the basis of where it came from. I definitely can see the push for the change. And like you said, like we learned, the Lions weren't the only team that felt that way, or even the league obviously felt that way. But I think I think it's one of those things that you have to. I don't know. You're always going to have somebody that's upset. You're always going to have a team that thinks that they didn't. They should have gotten, a better draw. But I think the way that the format is currently, I do think it works. I do think it works, and I do think it does reward you. I think it's weighted properly, I guess is the best way for me to describe it.
Okay. I think I was the biggest fan of back when there were only 6 playoff teams as opposed to 7. And then the
Yeah.
1 and the 2 seed both got the bye. The other 4 played. But obviously, the NFL wants more teams in the playoffs. Fortunately, not as many as the NBA. I'm thankful for that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't have a strong opinion on changing it. I'd have to do a little deeper dive because there's oftentimes unintended consequences when you make a rule change and you want to know, all right, well, what's the fallout? What does that mean? And so I'm okay with them not voting on it. The rule they did vote on, though, was a tush push. And the Green Bay Packers are the ones that suggested this. But of course, as we found out, I think the league instigated that one as well. I think there were a lot of concerns from some people, the injury aspect, because Jason Kelsey had been outspoken about it a little bit about how he really hated that play. But then right before the vote and stuff, he was making sure people knew there wasn't due to injury or anything. He just didn't like the play for a variety of reasons, I guess. But there was no data that showed that players were at more risk on that play of getting hurt than other plays. So knowing that that's not the concern, it narrowly failed. It almost passed. What are your guys' thoughts on banning the tush push?
Well, I think, anytime you've got a play that works that well, you're going to upset somebody. And I do think it's awesome, as Lions fans, the Lions were a team that wanted to keep it. And I think that very much speaks for who they are. They say, look, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, I think it was Dan Campbell came out and said, look, I mean, we got to stop it. I mean, that's a play that, at the end of the day, if they're gonna go out and run it, we got to find a way to stop it. And that's always been the name of the game. I mean, how many times over the past several decades have teams found a way to, I don't want to say cheat the system because that's not what they're doing, but they find a loophole, if you will, and ultimately, it doesn't mean that they need to take the rule or take the play out of the game. It just means that teams need to find a better way to stop it. And if it was out there causing mega injuries, I'm all on board. I don't need guys going out and getting concussed and snapping limbs and such for a single play. But that's, again, like you mentioned, that's not what's happening. So in my opinion, I think we keep it.
I mean, it's just
Right.
it's just one of those plays, man. It's so hard to stop. I remember the NFC Championship game with Washington and Philly just this past year. There was that one goal line stand that Washington kept trying to do, where it resulted in like 5 straight offside penalties because it just kept jumping.
Yeah.
Now that aspect of it is just annoying, but I mean, it's one of those you gotta stop it. I mean, and they tried their damnedest to stop it, but
Yeah.
I don't know. It's tough to ban a play completely, I would
I
think.
think it sets a bad precedent.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's at the end of the day, it's a QB sneak. It's really
Yeah.
all it is.
Exactly.
So,
It goes
are
back
they
to
going
the
to ban
whole
that?
the ability of pushing a player, pulling a player, because we've seen at different times when that wasn't allowed, then it's been allowed. And you have to have the right personnel to run the play, and you've got to execute it properly. And so, yeah, it's like you said, it's kind of like a quarterback sneak with a few variations to it and pushing, and you've got to have the right guy to run the play. And so, I'm glad the Lions weren't in favor of it. And like Dan Campbell said, we've got to figure out a way to stop it. So. It lives on at least for another year. We'll see.
Yeah.
Lions had some media sessions last week before we get to those and some other media on the St. Brown Brothers podcast. Amon-Ra St. Brown and his brother Equinemius had Isaac Tesla, the rookie wide receiver for the Detroit Lions. One of the things they talked about was the impressive headstand that he did, which was just days after Amon-Ra St. Brown did his. And so they already have something in common there. Obviously, they both played wide receiver. What are your guys' expectations for Tesla? It's a 3rd-round draft pick, but Tim Patrick's there in the starting lineup at this point. What are your expectations this rookie year for Tesla and maybe even going forward from that?
I really think he's going to get his fair share of snaps, but I definitely do think re-signing Tim Patrick shows that, yeah, he's wide receiver 3. And with what he did last year, you kind of can't not give that to him because he did show up in big times last year. And with him being a rookie, like in that wide receiver room, he's going to be learning from St. Brown. He's going to be learning from Jameson Williams and Tim Patrick. And you also got LaPorta on the tight end aspect as well. Like he's got some good people to learn from. So, but he's definitely going to get thrown in there every once in a while. And obviously, being a bigger body, 6'4", 220. I mean, he's good. I think he's going to be a really good receiver down the line. I mean, Amon-Ra was what, a third, fourth round pick as well.
Yeah, fourth
So
round pick.
I feel like, especially in this kind of offense, I think the expectations for him are going to be really high. He's not going to obviously see starting role week one, but I can see him as this, like they did with Jameson Williams, as the season goes on, he starts to get his stride a little bit. They'll start utilizing him more and more as well.
Do you think that they're going to use him more as a switch kind of, jack of all trades kind of guy, or do you think he's going to be somebody that, like you mentioned, they're going to just slowly integrate him as to be, a wide receiver too, or
You could see it. One thing you could see him trying to use him this year is with him being the bigger body, throwing him to the corners on some of those like first and goals, second and goals, where you're going to the pylons and you're just throwing a jump ball, and my guy's bigger than your guy, go get it.
yeah.
That's
Yeah,
what
and
I'd like to
also
see.
with the Lions roster being as deep as it is, you're returning your top four wide receivers from last year, who are all guys who have a great rapport with Goff. That Tesla is going to get worked into the system, and maybe his time on the offense, as far as playing in regular snaps, is going to grow as the season goes on, and he might be there to spell some guys. But they could move him from the outside to the inside a little bit.
Hmm.
Well, and he can catch the ball. We've talked about that. I mean, something that you have to do as wide receivers, you got to catch the ball. And he has got some of the surest hands in the draft. And so that's something the Lions covet. And at the end of the day, when you need a play, you need the guy to catch the ball. And so he might be that guy for the Lions, just like St. Brown is.
You can
Exactly.
imagine on third down, you got an option of, all right, well, I got St. Brown who hardly drops a ball, and then I got this rookie that hardly drops the ball. So
And then you've
you could
got
use St.
Tim
Brown on
Patrick
more of the
and
inside.
Laporta.
That too is like you could use St. Brown more on the inside. You could, with him being bigger, throw him on the sidelines on the
What?
outside as well.
Yeah, yeah. It'll be interesting to watch. I can't wait for training camp to just kind of see him taking the reps and working his way in. Another guy who will be taking reps right away, apparently, is Aidan Hutchinson. The big news came out last week that he has been fully cleared for practice. So, what are you guys expecting from Hutch this year? Is it fair to expect him to pick up right where he left off last year?
That's a tough one because I mean we all saw how gruesome that leg injury was. Luckily, it was a clean snap, so the rehab wasn't as detrimental as some other leg injuries are, like an ACL or some sort. But I don't expect him to pick up exactly where he left off because we're talking defensive player of the year numbers.
They were
But
incredible. He was doing great.
Hutch, obviously watching him at Michigan and now in a Lions uniform all these years, that kid's got one motor, man.
Yeah, he's got one way and that's on, I mean, and that's how he operates. I personally think he's going to come back and be just as good as he was. I think he might be slow start possibly, but I think he's motivated enough based on, last year sitting on the sideline watching that playoff run. And I think he's going to be just as motivated as ever. I think we're going to see the Aidan Hutchinson that we've come to all expect.
Now that he got the all clear in May, how much did you believe of him saying, like, if they made the Super Bowl, I could play?
Well, they asked him about that last week, and he said, "I guess we'll never know." So,
Honestly, what a great answer.
yeah. Well, let's jump over to the other side of the line, the offensive side. Panay Sewell was talking, and he's going to have another right guard next to him this year. And, he had Christian Mahogany fill in a little bit, but he had Zeitler, Kevin Zeitler, who left this past offseason. He's had a myriad of different right guards next to him. Any guesses you guys have on who takes that role this year? Will it be Tate Ratledge? Will it be Mahogany? Will it be somebody else? Any thoughts? Any predictions?
I think Mahogany, just on the sole purpose of having a little bit more experience under the belt. Like, I like the Ratledge pick as well, but I could see them maybe doing a 1A, 1B type thing with the two of them, with Mahogany seeing more just for the sole purpose. Obviously, he has a season under his belt now, and he's been in that group a little bit longer as well. And obviously, Ratledge needs to get his feet wet a little bit as well. I'm sure he'll see a lot of snaps in the preseason just to kind of get that NFL speed down. But I see Mahogany taking more snaps, but I could see them being a revolving door with each other all year.
I think Mahogany plays. I think he's the one that gets the majority. But I do think that Miles Frazier, a recent pick of the Lions, has got a really strong possibility to play some meaningful snaps this season. I mean, this dude started at LSU 3 straight seasons. Was just an all-around great player for them and had, really good numbers. And, the Lions that we've talked about before, the Lions go after a certain mold of player. They go for the guys that have the motor, the guys that work hard, they don't have off the field concerns. And, he fits that mold very well. And he's going to come right in right away and he's going to work. He's going to put his nose down, and that's what they need. And I think, he's going to give Mahogany a solid run for his money to play right away. And I personally think Ratledge, although he's a solid player, maybe to fit that role. I think they're grooming him to take Ragnow's spot because Ragnow has talked about in recent seasons, he's starting to maul the fence. The injuries are piling up. He's hurting. And I think that he's the guy, the Ratledge specifically, is going to be the guy to take his role in the future.
Yeah, it's going to be a real interesting training camp battle on that interior offensive line. The left tackle and right tackle, those are pretty well established, pretty well set. We know we've got 2 returning starters, but you're throwing 2 to 3 new guys in there in the battle. It'll be interesting to see how that all shakes out. And I also think it's a very important part because that has to remain a strength of the team for them to be successful this year. Another person who's hoping to remain a strength of the team is tight end Sam LaPorta. An interesting nugget he dropped is that he felt like this has been his first offseason where he could rest since like his junior or senior year of college, I think it was. And so he was healthy coming out of the season. Obviously, last year, starting the season, he was banged up. And so, he had great numbers, incredible numbers his rookie year. He had very solid numbers last year. What are you guys thinking out of LaPorta coming into this season? I mean, if he does what he did last year, is that good enough? Or do you want to see more out of him?
One big thing with Laporta is ever since we've seen since his rookie year has been consistency. Obviously, his numbers did dip a little bit this year, but I think efficiency was still the same. I didn't see like any real drop off in his play. I just thought maybe the play calls were a little different. You had a little bit more wrinkle, obviously, with Gibbs getting more looks and everything. So it wasn't. But when you called on his number, he did it. I mean, look at that catch he made in the playoff game with the one hand. And
Oh,
then
yeah.
there was that like play in Dallas where he caught it and ran another 35 yards for the end zone. He still got the efficiency, but I as far as his rookie numbers go compared to last year, I could see him meeting right in the middle.
Yeah, I think, he burst on the scene his rookie year, the unexpected talent and, teams didn't know how to scheme for him. You also got to give some credit to other teams' adjustments as well. I mean, it's the NFL, and you're going to get the best of the best, and that means coaching staffs as well. And so, he also has to find more creative ways to get open. And I'm not saying that, he's struggling with that, but, coming off a leg injury, slow start last season, still finished with solid numbers. He is not a player that I worry about. I would honestly say the only thing hurting his numbers is the sheer number of targets that the team has.
Mhm.
I mean, if you go to a team like Kansas City, which again, they are who they are, Kelsey is Kelsey, but you put Laporta on that team, I mean, his target and usage rate is just through the roof. And, he's going to find ways to impact the game. He goes over 1,000 yards in a team like Kansas City. I mean, I don't think it's even any question. Baltimore, I mean, he'd be all over it. And so I think the only thing that kills him is his own team, quite frankly, because I mean, the dude is just an absolute baller, and he is a wide receiver and a tight end's body.
Well, that's exactly it. He said our team scored how many points last year, setting so many records. That's the thing. Unless you put a second football on the field, it's going to be hard to get past a certain number because, Amon-Ra St. Brown continues to be steady and increasing. Jamison Williams had a huge step forward. Jahmyr Gibbs exploded forward. You've got David Montgomery already. I mean, there's only so many footballs to go around. So I'm not worried about him. I think one of the things you guys said is he's just consistently good. When the ball comes to him, he's dependable, he's reliable, and also it's not always when you catch the ball, it's are you blocking, are you creating the lanes for other people? We know he's doing that. So if somebody gets down on his numbers and think, oh, he had a sophomore slump, I would say look at the bigger picture of things and understand a couple more of the variables that played into that.
Like the tight end picture is so much. It's way different than looking at yards and touchdowns, because a lot of the reason why they're on the field is also blocking.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Well, let's look at a couple questions here. It's really early, but is there a certain rookie that you might think would be the most impactful for the Lions this year? Now, the Lions roster is as good as it's ever been in our lifetimes, and so even though they made some guys who some draft picks of some guys who could have instant impacts, it's tough. They're going to have to work hard to get those impacts. Which guy that they drafted do you think might be the most impactful this season?
Well, I
know
think
it's
the
early.
most impactful, I think this is a tough question only because I think if you're talking first half of the season, I think Tyleek Williams. And I say that because Aleem McNeil coming back is not going to be week one ready, not going to be week one Aleem that we're used to. They're going to need some meat in the middle. And I think he's a solid fit coming off the national championship, although it be with the enemy, the Ohio State Buckeyes. It's okay. And I think, they're going to utilize him a little more than they might have normally. But if you're looking at the body of work throughout the season, I refer back to Miles Frazier. I really like this guy a lot. And I do think that he is going to command reps. And I think he may end up being the most impactful if you look at full body of work for the season. How about you?
No, I like the Tyleek Williams one because of the sole purpose of how everything went down with the D line last year. They couldn't add enough bodies to keep up with what was going on. So just adding, like you said, more meat up there in the middle and just having a revolving door of being able to, oh, Ali McNeil needs a break. All right, Tyleek in, and he makes the same play.
Yeah.
And so I do like, obviously the first round pick. That's a very vanilla answer, but I mean, with how everything went down last year with all the injuries on the defensive side of the ball, you got to be excited about adding a first round talent on the D side.
Absolutely.
Oh, for sure. And I think Tyleek's going to surprise some people as much as you can surprise for a first round pick. Just because some people weren't overly joyed when they maybe drafted him. They were hoping maybe for a different position. I think he fits a big need. And I think I'm optimistic you're going to see some great play out of him early on. So let's look at the strength of the team. What do you think is the strength of the Detroit Lions going into 2025?
Ownership management, but that bigger picture, if you're going by player or position by position, I think just in general, I think the strength of this team is still the offense. I mean, as we talked about, I mean, there's just so many weapons to go around. Specifically the running back position, there's not really a better running back tandem out there. I mean, you could argue a few teams. I would say the top five so interchangeable, honestly, at this junction. You could argue on all sides. Gibbs is an absolute lightning in a bottle, and Montgomery's going to go out and get you the tough yards. I mean, if that's not what you want, I don't know what is, but what does that do? It opens up your wide receivers. It opens up your Sam LaPorta. It opens up Goff to maybe scramble once in a while, right? I mean, it just does a lot of things for the offense. So I still think it's the strength of the team, even though they've added a lot of pieces to the defense. I still think this team's carried by the offense.
Yeah, I would agree with that because, like you said, like the depth of it is just like, say Gibbs is in the backfield. All right, you got someone's got to spy on Gibbs. Oh, St. Brown's lined up. Oh, you got Jameson Williams. Oh, why is Isaac Tesla out here? Oh, there's Laporta too.
You're right.
Like,
Right,
I mean,
right.
and then you got to get through Panay Sewell just to get there.
And you never know; he might go out for a pass once in a while. You always got to watch out for that too. The big boy can run, and I think he even threw a pass last year. So, curious to see how that turns out. With the new offensive coordinator. But again, somebody that's been in the system before, I really don't expect a ton of changes. I do expect them to get away from some of the things that Ben did just naturally, but also I think they realized that it was very successful, and there's no reason to change a system that's not broken. And so. I do expect a lot of the same in that regard.
I love the running back room though. I just seeing Gibbs literally get better game by game, and he's such an amazing skill set to where his speed, he's able to just maneuver around out there, and he can catch the ball too. And then you got a power back in Dave Montgomery, who's got a very similar skill set, but he's got more strength to him.
Hmm.
It's
Hard to
Gibbs can get you down to the 5, and then Montgomery's going to pound it in already.
Don't forget every Lions fan favorite, Fred Reynolds, lurking back there at all times. You know, I mean, he's always the guy that's going to come in and give them the extra yards at the end of the game, and maybe they might have a couple touchdown lead. I mean, the running back room is pretty deep, and I think that again, as long as the offensive line does its part, it's going to be good again this year.
All right, yeah, that offensive line they're gonna rely on that. I'd say the strength is coaching. Like you said, you can say ownership. That's the leadership, the coaching of the team, and there's a lot of different areas that I think we can consider strengths. One area you started bringing up, you mentioned coordinators. Obviously, offensive and defensive coordinators have changed. You've got John Morton and Calvin Shepard in there. From a national perspective, it's causing some people to lose faith in the Lions a little bit. How is it affecting you guys?
Well, I mean, I mentioned with Morton, there's some familiarity there. He was with this organization before with Dan Campbell. I mean, so it's not like you're going from, you're not going to a Kubiak offense and then you're going, or you're not going to an air raid, or you're not drastically overhauling up an offense here that's broken. I mean, you're looking for subtle adjustments, small tweaks and changes, mostly language changes, really. You might run a lot of the same plays, but your language, your snap counts, your terminology is different, and so they're not relearning a playbook. They're just learning about how to use it a little bit differently. Defensively, I have a lot of respect for Aaron Glenn. I think Aaron Glenn, being a player himself, really bonded well with this team, and especially the defensive back room, and that was evident, I think, week after week. And I think that, don't get me wrong, I think he's going to be missed. I do think, however, I think this is a defense that's going to surprise a lot of people, and only for the sheer fact that they forget how good this defense was when they weren't healthy, although it was a short time. They forget how good this defense was, and so it's not like he's working with a bare set of players here. I mean, he's got a lot to work with, and so uh, again, coming from within the system, Shepard is a guy the players love a lot. And I think that they are going to really go out and perform for him. And I think that again, nationally, they may not be as high on him, but us as Lions fans, I think we know what we got.
At the end of the day, you still got Dan Campbell who's got the final say in everything.
Right.
I mean, that's the biggest thing. Yeah, you got two, like you said, two different voices on the OC and DC, but at the end of the day, who makes the final call?
Right.
Who makes
Well,
the
that's
playbook
ex-
and all
yeah.
the things?
And you've seen Dan Campbell involved with the offense from day one of coming to this team. So there is a lot of optimism. I think Lions fans are more optimistic just because they always have been, but also understanding the nuances. Like you said, they're not going to drastically change these systems. It's not going from a West Coast offense to something very different. It's not learning. I'm sure there'll be some tweaks in the terminology and whatnot, but it's not a overhaul. And as we pointed out before, you got most of the starters returning, and so therefore you already have guys with that familiarity of playing next to each other. So we've looked at the strengths. What's the weakness of this team? I mean, everyone says how good the Lions are. Heck, I often sing those praises. But let me ask you, what would you consider to be the weakness on this team?
The schedule.
It's not favorable. That's not
Well,
favorable.
that's the very next question here. So you
Yeah.
must be reading ahead. No, that's a great take.
It's interesting. I mean, at the end of the day, you got to play the schedule you're handed. I mean, and they're actually being punished for being good, and so that's a good problem to have. But I guess if you're looking by position wise, you could argue currently the linebacking core might be a slightly weaker spot, only because Anzalone, forearm, I'm not so worried about him. Barnes coming back, we don't really know the full extent of that. I mean, we do, but we don't. So you never know how quickly he's going to come back. And again, Campbell's still young. He's still figuring things out, although he's an ascending good player. They did let Reeves Maven walk this offseason, who was a really good system guy, and he was a guy that's been around this team forever, and he could always fill those gaps. And again, I'm not he's not not an all pro, you're not giving him something like that. But I would say if I was to really, and this is a nitpick, really, I mean, I have a lot of confidence in our linebackers, but I think that they might be the weakest point that I could possibly see right now.
Okay.
I I'm looking at the secondary, but not necessarily Brian Branch or Kirby Joseph, but the corners, because obviously Terrion, he struggled a little bit to start the year. He was very, very aggressive, and it seemed like every time a ball got thrown to him, a yellow flag was flying. But obviously, that's just being a rookie. It's obviously way more physical than the college football world is. So, but it started to get better and better as the year went on. And obviously, Amik Robertson is coming back, obviously, after an injury as well. So, but I mean, that if there was a weakness on the team last year, that was it, was the secondary.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's an ascending group. They've added pieces as well. So, I think,
It's all a nitpick at this point. They're such a good team that, any position you could argue both sides, but I would agree.
All right. Well, you brought up the schedule. You know, everybody talks about how difficult the schedule is. As soon as they released the opponents, we knew how difficult it was going to be because every road game was against a team that was playoff bound, except for the Bears and the Bengals. I don't know if the Bengals made it. They just missed it, but they were good enough. They probably could have been.
they are a good enough team to make it.
But it's not just because the Lions finished well. The other part is the rotation of the schedule.
Mhm.
And, the Bears have a tough schedule. The Commanders have a tough schedule. The Eagles have a tough schedule. Vikings, Packers, pretty much any team that's good in the NFC this year has a tough schedule. So it's not like the Lions are like the ones getting, the worst of it all. And
Right.
there are some elements that are good. They don't travel much other than going to LA and then Kansas City, not back to back, but they go to those places. Otherwise, they're on the East Coast for the most part. Obviously, very tough schedule on the road. As I've said before, it'd be nice to get one or two of those road games and flip-flop them with our home games. But what are you thinking of the schedule? It's tough, but, so is everybody else's that's in the NFC North and NFC East, and those are the ones that seem to be some of the better teams.
Well, I don't think there's a national outlet out there, aside from those that may really dislike the Lions, but there's nobody out there that the Lions should be scared of necessarily. I mean, they're a good team themselves. And so in order to be in this boat, playing good teams week in and week out like this, you have to be a good team yourself. And so to say that, this is going to be the Lions, I don't believe it. I mean, are they going to lose? I personally think they're going to lose more games this year. I think they're going to be a better overall team and they're going to lose more games than they did last season. And that's okay. You don't have to go into the postseason as the number one seed and win. I mean, that's not how it typically goes. And so I don't think they're going to sweep the division this year. I think they're going to have a setback or two. Every team has gotten better. I mean, the top 9 out of 10 teams, I think, are in the NFC as far as schedule goes. So, they've got a gauntlet to go through regardless, but so do the other teams. And so I think that ultimately, yes, I mean, playing, some of these games, I mean, at Washington, at Philly, those are not easy games, but again, they're going to go through the same things and they're going to have similar setbacks. And so I think it's going to shake itself out just fine. And like I said, the Lions are good enough to hang with anybody.
I think what helps is the home schedule is favorable. It's the road schedule that is daunting. Like you mentioned,
Right.
going to KC, going to LA, Philly, Washington, Baltimore as well. But as long as you can maybe split those games, where you go 500 during those games, I think that's pretty positive. Because obviously you're not going to sweep that like you swept the division last year. That's just not going to happen. But at the same time, you look at these other teams like Philly's got to be like, oh damn, we got Detroit in the schedule. Washington's probably saying the same thing because you got to figure Lions want revenge for the playoff game against Washington. Lions want revenge for the last time they went to Baltimore.
And probably the time
Li-
before that.
exactly.
They don't want to see us either. I mean, that's just
Exactly. And then the Lions go into Arrowhead again, which they've already done
Yeah.
and won. So
So, did you guys have predictions for the schedule last year for what the Lions' record would be?
for last year's season,
Yeah.
I think we ended at I think we thought like 13-4 because I think we said
I picked 12-5 last year.
I think we said we were going to lose at least one of the games in Minnesota and Green Bay.
Okay.
There was
Yeah, I
one
think-
of
The
those.
division sweep.
I think I was at 12-5 as well, and then after the bye, I just bumped it up to 13-4, something like that. But in my wildest dreams, I did not see 15-2 happening. And so, and like you said, I thought they would actually do worse than or equal to what they did the year before, but be better. And so, like you said, that I expect their record to not be as good in 2025. but they could potentially be better than 2024. You guys thrown out any records yet? Any predictions for what you think the record is going to be this year?
Go 11-6. I go 11-6, and I say that because I mean, these road games are brutal. You're going to chalk up what 3 games right there to some of these just absolute gauntlet of a road game. And you know what? If they drop a home game, or two, then that's fine. It's not what you want, but again, the division is hard. And as we learned last year, I mean, Chicago just about stunned us. If it weren't for Eberflus, I mean, he lost his job because he really screwed them up. I mean, he really did, and gave us the victory. I mean, and so that's how close it already was. And Chicago's gotten better. Ben Johnson, he's going to come out guns blazing against the Lions, and so you got to expect a slight regression to the mean. And 15-2 is not it's not a likely season to have again. And so just with all of those factors, I mean, again, I still think they're a better team on paper going into the playoffs with less injuries, just natural luck. But yes, the record will not reflect it.
All right,
Yeah,
Brett.
no, I totally agree with that. I'm thinking floor 10-7, ceiling 12-5. So we're talking that's 3-game swing right there.
Right.
And that will fall on the results of those daunting road games that they got, I think.
What do you think gets you into the wild card this year? I mean, what's the floor for a wild card?
Like
this
we've
year?
discussed, man, all the NFC's got a tough schedule. So you're not going to have your 1 seed 15-2 and your 5 seed 14-3 this year. That's just not going to happen.
No.
And it's going to be, you're going to win a division with if you're in the NFC East or the NFC North, you might win a division with a lower record. I mean, it could almost be like what happened in reverse because the West and the South don't have the same type of schedule. And so like last year, you saw the Vikings with such a great record having to travel all the way out to LA for that game. You could have something like that happen in reverse this year. You never know. I don't know that the West and South are good enough for that. I do think the Rams and Tampa will be pretty good. Atlanta, I don't know what we have out of them. And you never know who's going to surprise you, so you don't want to count anybody out. But, yeah, I expect the wild card teams. And, if you're in as a wild card team, you saw the New York Giants, a wild card team, beat the undefeated New England Patriots. So we all know it can happen. And the Lions were road warriors last year, undefeated. So not that I want to go that route, but anything can happen. I think the Lions just want to get in.
Yeah. Agreed.
No. All right, well, guys, as I mentioned before, you guys do a plethora of sports on your podcast. Not just the Lions. You do all the Big Four in Detroit. You do all things across Michigan. Is there a favorite sport or a favorite topic you guys like to cover on your show?
Oh, the Red Wings. The Red Wings. And that carousel of emotion team over there, I would say.
We're both hockey guys, so I mean,
Okay.
that's how we met. That's how we've been on the same beer league hockey team for almost a decade now, and so hockey's what we do. So naturally, the Red Wings, are what the main sport we grew up watching, and and I would say gravitate towards. Interesting enough, of the 4 major Detroit sports, they're the ones struggling the most right now, which is not typically been the case, but. Yeah,
not historically, no. It's been the opposite.
So it's interesting that how the roles have reversed here a little, but yeah, we Tigers, Red Wings, Lions, Pistons, big Michigan fans. We cover them all.
Awesome. Well, Brett and Brett, thank you both so much for being here. Can you please tell the listeners where can they find more of your content, talking social media, streaming platforms, and all the likes?
Yeah, so you can find us on all the major streaming platforms, Spotify, iHeart, Apple Podcasts. We're also on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook as well. TikTok. Yeah, we do throw up some videos on the TikTok even, and we're going to do some golf beats this summer. So if you're into golf, you're going to check out some of that this year too. So we got a lot of good things coming.
Awesome. Brett and Brett, thank you guys so much for joining the show. Folks.
Problem.
OTAs are coming up end of May, beginning of June. A couple small sessions here before a break. So keep your eyes open. We'll probably have a show coming up after those observations come out. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please tell your friends and family about the show. Find us on social media and on all streaming platforms, including YouTube. We'd love to hear your thoughts and reviews. And check out more episodes and content at notthesameoldlions.com. And until next time, stay gritty, my friends.